Bedevian and Jaklin Ekmekjian, two forces in the community who have done a tremendous job in bringing to us the English translation of the work of the widow of Gurgen Mahari, Antonina Mahari. And I know they're here. They would like to tell us the stories. And before I even start this interview, which is a very difficult one for me because there's so many questions and so much limited time, what I'd like to do is we've heard about Ruth Bedevian, and we have heard and read about her works. Ruth, what was the beginning? What was the genesis?
I think I have to thank Father Diran Bohadjan of St. Leon Church because he planted the seed, saying one night at a Women's Guild meeting, we don't know much about our cultural heritage. And on one of my visits to Armenia in 2003, we were taken to Hovhannes Tumanyan Home Museum in Dessert, in Vanadzor. And that was I guess you'd call it an epiphany. I just came back from that trip and I said to Father Diran, I will write articles for Le Radu, our church newsletter, once a month on Armenian authors and culture. I will take on that responsibility. And that led me into research, and then that led me to go to the museums each time I went to Armenia, because I'm fortunate enough to go frequently. And then I sent an article to Gurung, and then Asped Bedrosian, who's the administrator at Gurung, encouraged me, and he said, Ruth, are you thinking of writing a series? And I said, oh my goodness. And so I started writing my articles about the museum visits for Gurung.
We are going to discuss a book which will be featured also at the book event at St. Leon Armenian Church on Sunday, January the 25th. And the book is entitled My Odyssey. And let me just read and then give the mic to Jaklin. My Odyssey, from the green fields of Lithuania through exile in Siberia to a new life in Armenia, by Antonina Mahari, widow of Gurgen Mahari, one of Armenia's great writers. Translation by Jaklin Ekmekjian, who is sitting next to us, and Gohar Arsenian. English editing by Ruth Bedevian. Jaklin, it must have been a very tremendous experience, a unique experience. Tell us more about this, and what should we know about this book?
Absolutely. This is a very, very unique experience for me. It was the first in my career as a translator. I knew absolutely nothing about it, but what I had in common with this book was I came from a country which was part of the communist bloc, so I had a common culture with the Russian people and the republics who were under Russian rule at the time, and therefore I was able to relate to her stories. I was able to relate to her feelings, fears, and that put me in a unique position when I was translating the book. Of course, we didn't start with the Russian book, I should say this. We started with the Armenian translation of her book, which was done in 1994 in Beirut. And that was my first glimpse at her work. It was a tremendous and difficult work. I did that in the beginning with my friend Haiganush. We had a hard time with that book. Later on, we came across to the Russian original version, and we realized the problems we had were because that translation had been heavily abridged. In addition, it was missing the entire poetry which Antonina Mahari had included in her original book, which was beautiful. It was Lithuanian, Russian, and Armenian poetry. A lot of Gurgen Mahari's poems were included in her book. And once we started working with the Russian book, then it all made sense to us. It all made sense to me. I got really involved in that story, in her life story.
Ruth, what if somebody wants to know more about the book and just a very quick synopsis of the life of Mahari, how would you introduce the life of Gurgen Mahari?
Oh, Gurgen Mahari was an orphan from Van, and he wrote Burning Orchards, which was the book that created a tremendous furor in 1966 when it was published. But it is his masterpiece. and it is about the exodus of people from Van and the burning of the city in 1915, I believe. It has recently been published in English.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so happy that it has been, because it redeems Mahari. He was made to rework that book by the Writers' Union of Armenia, and it really did destroy him spiritually. And he was physically broken because he had spent 17 years in exile in Siberia. He had met Antonina in the second exile. He was exiled 1936 to 1947, and then returned home to Yerevan. By that time, his mother had died. There's a lovely chapter, incidentally, in the book that Antonina writes about Anush. Maidig Anush Jan. She never met her mother-in-law because she had died in 44, and she didn't meet Mahari until 52 or 53. But it's all the reminiscences that Gürkin shared with her, and so she shares it with us, which is a lovely portion of the book. But he's a man that he suffered tremendously, but there's no bitterness. There's no bitterness. And his work, he wrote another book called Blossoming Barbed Wire, which is about his experiences in Siberia. And that book has not been translated into English, which I hope the scholars will get busy and do. Now that Antonina's book has been published by AOA, Armenian International Women's Association, I thank them so much for their enthusiastic response to this. I hope that the scholars will get busy and translate his Blossoming Barbed Wire. It is compared to Solzhenitsyn's by scholars. It's been compared to Solzhenitsyn's Gulag Archipelago. Mm-hmm. But the scholars are in agreement that Solzhenitsyn's book is, it shows bitterness and anger, but Mahari's doesn't. He tells the story, and he was very famous in his writing for sardonic humor. And I think, wouldn't you say, Jaklin, you know the Russian closely, that Antonina has picked up on that?
Yes, she has picked up his style. Yeah. As painful as her memories are, and as horrible as they were, she was able to retell all that with a sense of humor and sarcasm. And there is something else about her that I want to emphasize. I did meet her on one of my Habitat for Humanity trips to Armenia. She graciously invited me to her apartment, where I spent a few hours with her. I was struck by the way she had decorated her apartment. It has become the museum for her husband. All the walls are covered with pictures and paintings with her husband and family and friends that they have shared so many memories.